And all right, let's go.
Well, I hope we're live. Good morning, ladies. Are we live, Leanne? Can you see?
We are live. I see
Okay.
webinar. We are streaming live.
Okay. It's kind of like you're talking to a computer and you don't know whether you're live or not. I can't do multitasking with the computer and my phone. So anyway, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks, Leanne, for holding up our sign. We are on our step 2 of our Conquer journey, which is clarity. And this is a big step. So take a deep breath. Even reviewing it last night, I thought, I'm gonna have to cut some of these chapters out. This is too long. It's a long chapter. And I want you to know upfront, you are not gonna get clear on every single thing this week. It takes, sometimes as a therapist, it took me years to get really, really clear on seeing all these things. So please, 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 this is just the first dose of it. It's sort of like learning a foreign language sometimes. You just can't catch even all the vocabulary. You're not sure what it means. You're not sure how to put it into place. It's like a big puzzle. And so be easy on yourself, be compassionate with yourself. You're getting an education on different aspects of abuse so that you can get clear. And so I want to just open with a verse that I have used that I think is just one of my key verses in my life. And Jesus says this. He says in Matthew 6:22, your eye is a lamp that provides light for your body. When your eye is good, in other words, when you can see clearly, when your eye is good, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is bad, you're not seeing clearly, your whole body is filled with darkness. And here's the thing that gets really scary. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, then how deep that darkness is. And so clarity is a really important module for you to see clearly. And I think one of the things that your biggest goal might be is, oh, now I need to get my husband to see clearly. And that usually doesn't work because Jesus talks a lot in the Bible about blindness, hardness of heart. He uses different word pictures: blindness, hardness of heart, self-deception, and unwillingness to see, and unwillingness to change the way that you see. He talked to the Pharisees pretty hard about that tendency. And so when you're living with someone who doesn't want to look at it from a different point of view, that doesn't want to see clearly, then you can't make them. Even Jesus didn't make people see clearly. So don't put it on yourself like, oh, if only I get through this module, if only I get through Conquer, I'm going to have all the right words to help my husband see clearly. This isn't about him seeing clearly. This is about you seeing clearly. Three main things. Maybe Leanne, you have a fourth. I don't know. I didn't even think of this ahead of time. See clearly who God is. God is a God who is for you. He is not against you. God is a God who loves women every bit as much as he loves men. God is a God who loves your safety and your sanity more than just pretending to keep your marriage together at all costs at any price. God is a God who values you and your life. And if you choose to use your life to suffer and sacrifice for something that's a worthy cause, martyred death for speaking up for the gospel, or jumping into a pond to save a child from drowning, and you choose to suffer and sacrifice for a worthy cause, okay, that honors God. But nowhere in the Bible does it say that you should willingly, sometimes we unwillingly suffer, all right, but we should willingly suffer and sacrifice for an unworthy cause. That's not called spirituality. That's called stupidity, really. And so when we as wives are taught to suffer and sacrifice in order to keep our marriage together, in order to keep our man happy so that we don't take him off, we're actually contributing to his immaturity and his blindness, which does no one any good. Not him, not you, not your kids, not your marriage. So it's an unworthy sacrifice. So don't do it voluntarily. Sometimes we get in a situation where we don't have a choice. We're robbed, we're raped, we're assaulted in some way, and we're victims. We're not willing victims, we're victims, but don't be a willing victim for an unworthy cause. So this is the importance of getting clarity, because there's a lot of spiritual teaching that kind of keeps you in confusion land. And one of the things that you joined Conquer for was to move out of confusion land and into sane land, out of insanity into sanity, out of darkness into light. And it's not just spiritual light about Jesus died on the cross for our sins, but it's spiritual light about who God made you to be, who God is. And so the first thing is to get really clear on who God is and his word for you and what it means. The second thing to get really clear, you want your eye to be clear on, is who you are. That you're not just an object to use as a wife or as a mom. You're a precious person and God values you. And that doesn't mean you're more important than anybody else, but you're not less important than anybody else either. And that you're not just to be treated as trash or to be used by a selfish person and let yourself do that. Sometimes we are used by a selfish person, but to allow that over and over and over again says you're not clear about who you are. You know, if you had a beautiful guitar, a Gibson guitar, a Martin guitar, you know, $1,000 guitar, and you used it as a coffee table, it would be like, what? What are you doing? This isn't what this is for, right? And so when we allow ourselves to be used just to be objects for someone else's pleasure or for them to take out their wrath on us, that's not our intent. That's not who God made us to be. So to get really clear on who you were made to be. So who God is, who you are, and what healthy relationships look like, including marriage. That's the third thing that this module is supposed to help you do, because you might have a bit of unhealthiness or toxicity to your own life. I certainly did. And so it's not just I'm all good and he's all bad, or I'm all white and he's all black. It's we all have unhealthy elements, and we may contribute to the unhealthy elements in our marriage by certain things that we do. It's not our fault that he abuses us, but we may have some unhealthy dynamics in the way that we see ourselves, in the way that we see other people, in the way that we think. And so this module of clarity is meant to help you get a taste of what God, who God really is, a taste of who you really are, and a taste of what relationships, healthy and unhealthy and toxic, look like, so that you can begin to make some shifts. And this is a lifelong journey. We get clarity throughout our entire life. So don't think that, okay, this week I get clarity. All right. In fact, you'll hear me repeating things in the other modules. So when you get to stability, we're going to go back over core strength. You've done a little bit of core strength teaching in this module. We'll be going back over it because you need to hear it many times before it really sinks in to what it is and what it is. And in fact, we just closed a core strength class last night. And I think all throughout the class, everybody was thinking CORE, and the E step didn't apply to them. It applied to everybody else. I have to have empathy and compassion on my abuser, but I didn't have any empathy and compassion for myself. And it was like, no, this core strength is applying to you, how you treat yourself. First and foremost, you can't treat someone else in a way that you don't treat yourself. And so have empathy and compassion for yourself when you mess up. It's okay. It enables you to have empathy and compassion for someone else without enabling. You see, we enable ourselves when we mess up too. We beat ourselves up and then we go have a bottle of wine and a pizza, right? So we comfort ourselves in enabling ways, in unhealthy ways, but we aren't compassionate with ourselves when we mess up and correct ourselves. And so all these new skills and all these new ways of thinking is part of this clarity module. And I just want to start by saying, don't get overwhelmed. I know you might feel that way. That's why we're kind of slowing things down a little bit. We're not doing any extra Facebook Lives other than this Conquer Journey right now, because it's tempting to get like, oh, I got to learn this, and I got to learn this. It's okay. It's okay. And if you didn't even watch the modules yet, it's okay. Be compassionate on yourself. There's a lot going on in everybody's life. I am dropping a few balls. I haven't gotten everything done I need to get done this week. It just is how it is. We're human beings. We're limited. And that's clarity. See, clarity helps me to accept my limitations. Clarity helps me to see that I'm not just a worker bee. I'm also a grandma, and I got 3 little grandkids up here, and I've got to care about them. And we're reading Anne of Green Gables, and they're anxious to finish that story, and that's taking some time. And all those kind of things that we do in our lives, that we don't have time for everything, all that we would like to do. But clarity helps us to accept that without self-hatred, because we recognize we have limited energy, we have limited time, and we've got to use it in the best way we can in the moment that we're in. So, Leanne, anything you want to add in terms of just a summary of what you want to encourage the women with?
You know, I think I love everything that you just shared. And yeah, I think that's my favorite phrase. It is okay to slow down. It is okay to push pause. The other thing about this clarity module that really struck me as I was reviewing it is just remember, ladies, we are always at choice. Oftentimes we think we don't have choices on how we show up or the conversations that we have or what we think about. Because we can program, don't you think, Leslie, we can program ourselves into thinking that I need to think a certain way because somebody told me that. So we have all of these different beliefs that cloud us, that cloud our clarity. I often think of, have you ever had, like even this morning when I was putting my glasses on after I did my makeup and kind of got my hair done, I had hairspray on my lenses and everything, right? I had to clean that off. And that's what this clarity is. Every day we have to choose to clean our lens, how we view our situation, how we view our relationships, how we view God. We need to clean that off sometimes because the world will spray our lens with all kinds of stuff. Greasy makeup, hairspray, right? For us girls in this space. But that is our responsibility, is to clean our lens, to, really own that. But then remember, we're always, always at choice.
Yeah, and I love that. Clean my lens is really metaphoric because when I got on the Facebook Live, my lens was really fuzzy on the camera. And you could hardly see in my outline because my camera was dirty. And so cleaning the lens was really applicable this morning. But I love this idea of choice, because the more you recognize that you have choices, the more power you feel you have. The less you recognize you have your choices, then the more trapped and victimized you feel. So, if you're, in a relationship and he's not changing, and you start saying, well, I have no choices. Yes, you still have choices. You have choices about how you're going to show up in that moment. You have choices about what you're going to do with your life. You have choices about how you're going to handle yourself. All of those choices you still have, even if you don't have choice over what's happening to you, you still have choice over how you're going to handle what's happening to you. And sometimes we don't even recognize that. But once we start to recognize that and exercise that, even the COVID-19 is teaching us that, right? You have a choice about how you're handling the isolation. You have a choice about how you're handling the rules. Are you following them? Are you not following them? Are you practicing safety? Are you not practicing? Those are your choices. And the consequences are yours as well as others. And so I think it's really important in this module to get one thing crystal clear. God has gifted every single human being with a gift, and that is a choice. To love him, to not love him, to obey him, to not obey him. And in every choice we have, there are consequences for sure. That's why we teach our children, hey, if you make these choices, if you eat too much candy or you stay up too late or you can't finish your homework, this is what happens when you make choices to play on your iPad all day. Now, children obviously don't make good choices. That's why God gives them parents to help them make better choices. But we have consequences to our choices. If I ate as much chocolate and ice cream as I wanted every day, I would probably be at 30 or 40 pounds heavier than I am right now, because I would like to eat a lot of it. I'd like to eat a big bowl of chocolate ice cream every single night. I would love that. I just can't do it. My body won't do that without consequences that I don't like. And so I think understanding that idea that God, the creator of all the universe, did not make you a robot. He made you with agency. And when we are in a relationship with someone where someone takes that agency or tries to, especially spiritual authority in church or in Bible verse slinging, understand this clarity. You have choices and you don't have to surrender your choice. Even if you surrender, you're surrendered because you don't have certain choices. I don't have a choice to leave right now. I'm in jail, right? I don't have a choice to leave jail. Marriage might be jail for you. I don't have a choice right now to do that. I'm not prepared, but I have a choice about how I'm going to be in jail. Joseph had a choice. Esther had a choice about how she was going to be a slave. That's what Paul tells slaves in Ephesians 6. You have a choice, slave, how you're going to show up as a slave. You don't have a choice about whether you're a slave right now, but you have a choice about how you're going to show up as a slave. This isn't to browbeat someone into being good, be good, be good. It's saying, hey, when you recognize you have a choice, you're empowered. You have power now. And that helps you mentally and emotionally make better choices for yourself. So if nothing else that you get out of this clarity, is that we're going to reclaim as a woman, you have a right to choose. It's not your husband's right to choose for you how to think, how to feel, how to be. That's your responsibility. And if that's all you get out of this module, that clarity, oh my gosh, I mean, I can have my own feelings. I can have my own needs. I can choose to say no. I mean, one of the very first words a child learns in their maturity, but after mama and dada, is what? No. And when they start to learn that word, what power? What power? No, no, I'm not going to eat those vegetables. You can't make me. I can close my mouth. I'm not going to eat those carrots. I'm going to spit them out if you force me. And that helps them sense I'm different than you. You can't make me. I have some power. And so it's a very important developmental step in maturity for children. And when we lose our power to say no, or we surrender it, we're not healthy. We're not healthy. Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps during World War II, wrote a book. He was a psychiatrist, Man's Search of Meaning. And he said that if we lose our choice to choose, if we lose our clarity that we have a choice to choose, then we become robotic and we'll die because we become depressed, especially when we're in a bad environment. Right? And so even those who were in a bad environment had a choice about how they were going to be there. So if that's all you get out of this module, that's huge. Thanks, Leanne, for bringing that up.
Oh, you're welcome. It is. It's so important. And I think, personal example, right? I think that was something that I struggled with, was realizing, if you've watched my Staying Well video, right? It was learning where I end and somebody else begins. And so here's a funny little, it's not funny. It's a sad example. But the Leanne of 10 years ago would ask my husband, hey, you want to go for a walk? You want to go for a hike? And sometimes he would say yes. And sometimes he would say no. Well, guess what? If he said no, I'm like, okay, I guess we're not supposed to walk or hike right now. What is that? Right? So the Leanne of today, after doing my work and praying and doing my work, now, last night I had to get out and walk. And I was walking by, my husband was in the yard, and I said, hey, I'm going for a walk. See ya, and I invited him. I said, hey, do you want to come? And he's like, no. I'm like, great, I'll see you in an hour. So ladies, it seems like a really elementary example, but when we realize, or we have this thing in our head, this stuck space where we think that we are not of choice, we won't even try anything new. We won't
like the dogs, like the dogs in the videos.
Just like the dogs in the videos, we won't even try a new exam or a new opportunity or adventure. If we don't believe it's true or that we have choice, we will not even try. And so we've got to be really careful about what we're thinking about. And the other thing in the clarity module that really stuck out to me is don't believe everything that you think.
And stop right there, Elaine, because somebody put something in the feed, Martha did, who's making a comment, and it just goes along with this. She said, it's hard to feel like I have choices when I know my good choices will cause consequences because how husband will react. How can I get past this? And this is exactly what Leanne's talking about. This is a limiting belief that my good choices will always turn out with bad consequences. That's not true. And you don't know that your bad choices of not doing anything won't also turn out with bad consequences.
And I love, thank you for the courage, sister, to put that into the feed, because this is super important. And there is something that we can all remember. We are not responsible for the outcome. God is responsible for the outcome. Yes, there are going to be consequences, for sure. Sometimes there's going to be fallout that is going to feel uncomfortable because of the choices that are made for us or the choices that we make. But we're not responsible for the outcome. Ultimately, God is. We're responsible for how we show up. And are we living true to who God created us to be? And a lot of that, girlfriends, is going to be revealed as you do this Conquer journey, as you grow, as you mature, and as you take that next best step into cleaning your lens.
Yeah, and I think this is so let's just give a simple illustration. Let's say that you're at work and you make a choice about whether you're going to reveal you're a Christian or not. Or you're in your neighborhood and you make a choice about whether you're going to reveal that you're a Christian or not. And you reveal that you are. You don't proselytize, you're not badgering people with the Bible, you're not, saying you're going to hell if you don't believe. You're just saying, yeah, I believe in the Bible and I'm a Christian and this is why, or whatever. You share your story. And some people in the neighborhood think you are a kook and don't want anything more to do with you and won't let their children play with your children. How can you control that outcome? And some people might think, wow, she's Christian, great. She's got great morals. I'll, trust her kids with my kids. And you don't know what the outcome is going to be sometimes. And you can't control that. You can't control the outcome. You can't control your husband's reaction. You might think you can. So and maybe you can, if you always agree with him and you always do what he says and you always make him happy in the ways that he wants to be happy, you become that fantasy wife, or try hard to become that, which you can't totally become that, but you try hard to become that. Is that pleasing God? If that pleases your husband, okay, does that please God for you to deform yourself into what your husband wants to avoid conflict? And you have to answer to God for that. I don't. But that's the long-term consequence of doing that. So you have to wrestle with these questions because you have to live your life. I don't have to live your life. I have to live my life. All we're trying to do is help you get clear so that if you make that choice, you're making it out of clarity and not out of blindness, not out of default, like I should, or this is what God wants. If you make that choice out of fear, if I make a choice, hey, I better not speak up here because if I do, I might get shot. Somebody just cut me off on the road. And if I react and honk my horn or give them a bad look, I could get shot. Maybe I best not react here because I'm a little scared. That's my choice. And I probably would make that choice. But I'm not guaranteed of a positive outcome. I can still get in a car accident or some jerk can still shoot me from the road, right? But I can make those choices as long as I'm conscious of the choice I'm making and why. And it's fine. You don't have to make my choice. You don't have to make Leanne's choice. You have to be conscious that you have a choice. And being passive is a choice. Doing nothing is a choice. And is that the kind of life you want? And sometimes it's a good choice to be passive and do nothing. And we'll talk a little bit about, I'm going to do some Concord videos on passive resistance. Martin Luther King was a great example of passive resistance to evil. So you don't have to be aggressive in standing up for yourself. You can be more passive or more winsome, like Martin Luther King was, all right? You don't have to be like I can't think of some of the other protesters that were more radical, but their names, but you can have a passive resistance and have a huge presence. I think of the movie you probably saw it at Churchland, the Jackie Robinson story, where the first African-American baseball player, it went through a lot of torture and torment, mocking for being a Black person on a white boy's game, right? And he didn't strike back. He chose to be honorable and handle himself as probably beyond what he would need to do today in today's culture, but as a overly honorable, strong Black man. And that got people's attention in a good way. But he made a choice. He had to make a choice every day not to react with evil to evil back. And that made an impact. That was passive resistance. So we're not saying to go out there and, tell your husband what a jerk he is, but you have to be clear about what you're doing and why. And when you're living out of fear of losing your marriage, fear of, what might happen, I don't know that that's God's best plan for your life.
Well, and there, you just nailed it. And there's two, you maybe have heard me say this before, but there's two acronyms for fear: face everything and rise, or flee everything and run. That is a choice. We can face it or we can flee it. It is up to us. And part of the clarity, part of gaining this strength is getting strong in who you are, what you believe, what you think about, and who you want to be from today forward. Ladies, everything that has happened in your life, through your life, and to your life is brought you to where you are today. It has totally brought you to this space, and it is all okay. It's made you who you are. What you do with all of your circumstances from today forward is totally up to you. We all get to decide. We can't change even yesterday. We can't. But what we can do is make a difference today. And, for me, sometimes, Leslie, I don't know about for you, but sometimes it's a moment by moment, second by second decision, because the world and relationships and everything can come firing at us. And then we get to stand in who we are and how it is that we're going to respond.
And I think that, in some ways, as I'm looking at some of the feed that Martha's sending me, some of you are afraid of the outcome in ways that says something to you about your trust in God, right? So I think that's where you need to get more clear. So if I am afraid, so I'm going to take it out of the marriage realm for a minute, and let's just put it in the mental health realm. If I'm afraid to drive because I might get in an accident, if I'm afraid to go to the grocery store because I might have a panic attack, I've had one before and I don't want to have one again. So I know that I had one the last time in the grocery store, so I'm not going to go to the grocery store anymore. And if I'm afraid to cross over a bridge because I'm afraid that my car might, fall off the edge and I'm going to drown and I wouldn't know what to do to get out. And if I'm afraid to speak up for myself because I'm afraid that my neighbor won't talk to me anymore. And if I'm afraid, is that how you want to live? Like, do you want to live in reaction to your fear of what might happen? You can choose to do that. Plenty of people do in the mental health field. They're called agoraphobics. They live in their house all the time because they're afraid to live, because they're afraid of what might happen. And it's a fantasy in their head of the stories they're telling themselves. And any of those things could happen. And I've shared this with you before, I had this fear when I got pregnant that all kinds of bad things were happening. When I ruined my only pregnancy, I only had one pregnancy. I ruined it thinking of everything bad that could happen. I could have miscarriage. He could have, a sudden infant death syndrome. He could have the cord wrapped around his neck. He could have, autism. He could be Down syndrome. Everything that could go wrong, I planned it out. That this might happen to me. And my son's 41 and he's never even broken a finger. I mean, he's never been in the hospital. So all that worry about what might happen never happened. And I think that we live in what if a lot, or in the past, if only I didn't do that, this wouldn't have happened. And what if I had done this, if I do this, this will happen. And so you have to decide whether you want to live that way. I don't think God calls you to live this way, but I think all this fear of what might happen, I think Leon nailed it in saying, can we trust God with the outcome every day? You are living in a fantasy if you think you have control. Every day when we walk out the door, we don't know what's going to happen to us. We think we know. I think I know when I drive to the grocery store, I'm going to get to the grocery store and I'm going to get home safely. But there are people who drive to Walmart and get shot. There are people who drive to the grocery store and don't come home because they have a heart attack on the way, or they get in a car accident. We think we know what's going to happen. We take our children to the park and we think we're going to bring them home and one gets nabbed. We don't know everything. Now, if we live in all the what ifs, what if this happens? Like, I've got my grandkids. Well, what if we go hiking and what if them falls off the trails? Or what if one of them gets nabbed? And we can't live that way, or you are going to live terrified and live small. So this goes back to your trust in God. Do you have a God who cares about you? And can you live your life abundantly and fully? I've come that you might have life and that you may have it abundantly. And can you live your life abundantly? And can you trust God that if something bad happens, horrible, you get cancer, your child gets cancer, your child gets kidnapped, you get in a car accident, you lose your marriage, can you trust God that you'll get through it? As you're living honorably and vivaciously alive before Him, can you trust God to be your portion if something would be happening? Can you trust God if you tell the truth to your employer about something, or you tell the truth in court and you're not getting justice in this world? Can you trust God that He sees what you've done and you're honorable? You tell your husband the truth and your husband doesn't like it. Can you trust God for the outcome? So you have to decide who you want to be as a person. And if I want to be a scared, small person who lives in my house afraid of what might happen, okay, but am I going to regret that on my deathbed that I lived small and afraid? You have to decide. I can't decide that for you. I'm just making you aware of your choices. You have choices. Let me get to some of our questions. And for those of you who don't have questions, I'd like to know what are some of your aha moments? What were some of your clarity moments as you went through this module? Like what went, oh my gosh, I never saw that before that way. Or oh my gosh, my eyes are open. What were some of your aha moments? Because as you put them in the feed, that might encourage other women to recognize their aha moments as well. All right, so let me just go back to some of this. All right, somebody said, as I'm seeing more clearly, I am recognizing my part and he is changing, which often happens. But what I'm struggling with is what feels like a need for him to acknowledge his fault. He is acknowledging that he's had some bad behaviors and has treated us poorly. It feels like I need him to say it's his fault. Like I need him to accept blame for where we are. Why do I have this innate need to hear him take the blame? And how do I get past that, or do I? I think that's a really very insightful question. And it is about you, isn't it, right now? It's about, I need this, or I want him to be the bad. We want someone to be the bad guy. And even when we look at the narrative of our culture right now, and we want Trump to be the bad guy or somebody else to be the bad guy. We always want a bad guy because we don't want to look at ourselves. The Democrats definitely, and I'm not loving Trump, please don't hear me say that, but the Democrats definitely want Trump to be the bad guy. He can't do anything good. Everything he tries to do, even if he tried to do something good, he's always the bad guy because they don't want to look at their responsibility to also co-govern the country. And Trump wants other people to be the bad guy. He's always blaming and shaming people too. So he's not innocent in this game that people play. But I think it's intrinsic in human nature. If we look at Adam and Eve, hey, I didn't take this apple. The serpent made me. The serpent's the bad guy. And Adam, she made the woman. It's not the woman you gave me, God. You're the bad guy. She's the bad guy. It's not my fault. And so I think intrinsically we want to be, lily white. We want them to be all bad. The truth is, it's not so clear cut. I'm not saying that your husband hasn't done really bad things to you, and he may have, but when he becomes the monster and you become the victim, it's very hard to up that power dynamic and you start to get overwhelmed. So when he can become just a broken sinner, just like you're a broken sinner, and his sin may be much more serious consequentially than yours, no doubt. But when we can see it more that way, then we can be compassionate with good boundaries, and including leaving if we need to, without having him have to be at fault for everything. You just said you recognize some of your part of the dance, right? And some of our part of the dance is never speaking up. I don't know what's your part and what you're recognizing. So I think at this point, the work is not to get him to admit he's at fault. Let the Holy Spirit do that work. Your work is to admit, why do I want him to do this so much? That's your work to do right now. Okay, but thank you so much for sharing, because that's truly insightful that you're aware of this nag inside of you to want something that maybe God's saying, hey, let's look at this. Why are you needing him to be the bad guy? All right, let's look at another one. Oh, well, I'm not gonna get my glasses on. There's a lot of them here. All right. I had my first one-on-one with him in 9 months, 2 days ago. I'm really messed up in my mind. I was in an emotionally abusive marriage. What can I do to get my mind to think straight? It is just really messed up. He, of course, is the victim, or so he thinks. My counselor wasn't happy with the way he acted in our first meeting. I'm not looking for him to change at this point, but after 9 months, it might have helped with my healing if he would just acknowledge something. He sure did a number on my mind. So I'm not sure what you're asking here, but people can play with our minds. That's what brainwashing is called, right? But there's a part of passivity in brainwashing where, unless you're a captive for a long time, but even those who were captive, like our senator from Arizona, I'm all of a sudden losing what was his name? John, no, the senator, John, I want to say John Glenn, but it's not John. Who was the guy who just died? Who was the senator from Arizona who had who was a Vietnam prisoner of war for years and years and years? King. Yeah. So yeah, McCain, John McCain. So yeah, you can be a prisoner of war and still resist the brainwashing. And so I think you have to ask yourself, what's going on in my mind that I am so easily overtaken? I am so easily guilt tripped. I am so easily shamed. I am so easily manipulated. I am so easily beaten down. Because you can't change other people. But once you realize, oh, this is what I don't have good boundaries. I believe everything anybody tells me. I don't have good discernment. Then you can do something about those things, right? You can do something about those things so that your mind isn't so easily messed with. And I think this is the adulting that you and I think a lot of women have failed to do. We have stayed, and their church has endorsed us to stay somewhat childlike. And just trust God and trust your husband and trust your pastor, and he will fix it all for you. And that is not adulting. And so part of adulting is guard your heart above all else. Take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So our mind is important. Then you are the steward of your mind. So if you've let someone come into your mind and mess with it, what do you need to do to not let that happen in the future? And what do you need to kick them out so that you can clear up the confusion? Just like if you let someone in your house and create chaos. If you let the neighborhood boy come in your house and he opens up your cupboards and starts pulling everything out and starts pouring your sugar on the floor and he starts throwing your laundry all over the place and you think, oh my gosh, he messed with my house. Well, you let him. You had no boundaries. You didn't have your no. And if you keep letting him do that every day, of course you're going to be in a tizzy full of anger and resentment that he did this to me. But what's your part? What's your part? All right. Of allowing that to happen. So this is part of clarity, is I have to choose not to let that happen. What do I need to do to not let that happen? And we will work in the next modules of stability, strengthening, and confidence so that you can learn to do that. But when you let someone come into your head and with a lawnmower and mow down all your thoughts and replant all their thoughts, you've let that happen. And you've got to guard your mind, guard your thoughts. All right. Let's see. I have so much bitterness and resentment because of this. I want him to own and admit what he did. I don't think he ever will. So I need to let it go. How can I start this? Any thoughts, Leanne?
Yeah, a lot of thoughts. Thank you. And thank you, sister, for your courage to even ask that question. So just personal story or example. Yeah, that was my big thing, is I wanted so badly for my husband to own his stuff. I wanted him to be in CORE without learning what CORE was. And if somebody, can I just shoot straight with you? If somebody is not doing the work, if somebody doesn't want to be well and be healthy, they cannot own their stuff. It's physically, mentally, spiritually impossible without the intervention of the Holy Spirit for them to own when they are in that lane of living for self. So if they, that sounded kind of harsh. I hope that wasn't too strong for you, ladies. Leslie, if it was, you could tell me to back up.
Well, think of it physically. I mean, how many of us are in denial? Like even me. So I'm having these heart palpitations and shortness of breath, and I'm 68 years old. You'd think I probably should go to the doctor and see what's going on. I'm like, oh, it's just altitude sickness. It's, so I don't want to own that I might have, and I'm going to, but it's hard. You don't want to own that I might have a problem. Or, if your sugar is a little high in your blood test, you're saying, oh, it'll probably go down next time. I'm not willing to own that and change my diet in order to get healthy, right? Give me a pill, make it easy. But if I have to work at it, I don't want to own that, right? we're all doing it. Okay. You want your husband to be emotionally and spiritually healthy, but let's look at the physical level. We do it all the time. We don't want to own that what we put in our mouth affects our health. We don't want to own that. We don't want to see clearly about all the processed food and the chemicals that we put in our body are really harmful because we enjoy them. And so your husband enjoys his sin. He enjoys power over you. He enjoys dominating you. And why would he want to own that and be sorry for that if it works for him?
Well, yeah. And you know, something, Leslie, that you had shared with me that was super helpful when it comes to this ownership piece. And for you sisters who just want them to get it and to own it, shame for a man is so incredibly strong that for them to take ownership means that and if they're not grabbing the robe of righteousness that the Lord wants them to grab, they will put on a coat of shame. And it's almost like they have this target on them, that they're walking around with this target if they take ownership of some of these areas. And that shame trigger, the shame veil, whatever you want to call it, that a man can have is super, super strong. And we had something in my household. There's been some stuff going on here during COVID-19 that I have had the privilege, of navigating. Yeah, not so much. But I'm grateful for it because it's allowed me to see some of the things in myself. And it's also allowed me to see the areas that I cannot expect my husband to own if he has not done or is not currently doing the work. They can't see it. Talk about clarity. They almost have Vaseline. It's like slobbing Vaseline all over the lenses of their life. They can't see it because they haven't taken time to clean that lens. And so it's really understandable, girlfriends, that you would want a healthy dose of ownership coming from them. It's really understandable that you would want them to say, hey, I really blew it and I'm super sorry. They may not. The question that we have is, are we going to be okay whether or not they do own it?
And I'll just share this story with you because I think this is a huge healing aspect for you guys that I want you to not get stuck in. So I was a therapist for many years, but for many of my own years, I was stuck in a lot of resentment myself because my mom wouldn't own her stuff. She just wouldn't. And so here's the catch. So here's the lie. I was telling myself, I need her to own her stuff in order for me to heal. Well, that puts me in a terrible bind because then that means I can't heal. I can't let go of my resentment. I can't move on and live a healthy life until she does. What if she never does? Does that doom me to repeat the same thing? That's not true. That's not what God says. I mean, Joseph was terribly wounded by his brothers and what they did to him. He was terribly wounded by Potiphar's wife and her lie and the consequences of being in jail for all those years. And it wasn't his fault. He, if anyone, could have been bitter. But what would it have cost him? It would have cost him his character. He would have never become the Pharaoh's right-hand man, that's for sure. Later on, much later on, he got his brother's apology, but Joseph was fine without it. And I had to learn. Of course, it's nice to get an apology. Of course, it's nice for someone to say, I am so sorry I hurt you. That was so wrong. It makes it forgiving a whole lot easier and moving past it. But for some people, they still don't want to let go of it. But it makes it easier for sure. But here's where you have to wrestle and become this clarity. If you need them to do something for you in order for you to get well, then you're not taking ownership of your life. You're saying, I need them to do their part before I can do my part. And that's just not true. You can do your part because you are robbing yourself. And the only one who's getting hurt by your resentment is you. My mother could care less if I resented her. She could care less if I hated her. She was off doing her thing. She didn't even talk to me. She could care less. It didn't matter. The person whose life it was ruining was mine. Is that what you want? And if you don't want it, then you have a choice. And that's the first part of letting go of resentment. because resentment is not only a feeling, it's a mindset. How dare they treat me this way? And I will never let it go. And you can hang on to that if you want to, but it's like a 50-pound weight that you're carrying. So if you're carrying resentment right now, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go get one of your kids' backpacks, and I'd like you to put like 10 pounds of meat in that backpack, or 10 pounds of sugar in that backpack, or put a 10-pound weight in that backpack, or 20 pounds. And I'd like you to walk around with that all day long and ask yourself how that feels. And is that what you want to do? These are your choices. This is where we go back to clarity. You have a choice. And if you're hooking your healing on someone apologizing, then you're a prisoner of their growth, and you're not taking ownership for yours. All right. So the truth is you can let go of it, but you have to, the very first step is you have to decide, I will let go of it. I want to let go of it. I don't want to carry this, whether they apologize to me or not. I'm letting go of this because the person whose life it's ruining is mine.
Yeah. And you know what? We all only have 100% every day to give. And if we are spending 98% trying to fix or change or waiting, if we're waiting for somebody else to own their stuff, and we're putting all of our energy, 98% of our energy into wanting to fix or change them, we only have 2% left to work on us and to own our stuff. I don't know about you ladies, but I'm not okay with 2% to show up in my day. I don't want only 2% of Leanne to show up in my day. I want a lot more of her to show up. There is stuff that we're going to have zero control over. We can't stop our husband's destructive behavior. I couldn't stop my mom's alcoholism too. You know, my mom passed away several years ago and of cancer. And she spent a lot of her years kind of bitter and didn't do a lot of her own work. We'll just say that. But on her deathbed in the hospital, she pulled my sister and I over to the bed, and she took us by the hand and apologized for not being our mother. Finally, she was 86 years old when she did that.
And my mom did it on her deathbed too.
Isn't it amazing? And
I think it starts to clarify things for them. Oh my gosh, I have regrets. I didn't do my work.
That's right. And, you know, the different responses for my sister and I had to forgive my mom years ago for her alcoholism and neglect and, you know, different things in my life because I knew that I was not healthy. My sister said our responses were a little bit different. She says, wow, I've been waiting my whole life for my mom to say that. And I'm like, I had to forgive mom a while ago. And that just shows we grew up in the same household. We had the same experiences, but we were two different women. And it is okay to respond differently depending on where we're at. And so just remembering that we can't change them. They're going to have to get there in their own time. And so we just pray for God to light your own path where you need to walk next.
So here's another comment or question. And again, I want you guys to pay attention as you write these. I want you to reread your writing, even as you write in the Facebook page and stuff, because your own language, how you talk to yourself impacts yourself. So when you tell yourself, oh, I can't do it, I'm stuck, it's not going to work, it's, you know, it's too hard. When you tell yourself those things, it does impact your attitude about doing them. And it impacts sometimes your choices. I've told you about that idea that the door was locked and it wasn't locked, but my idea was that it was locked. And so I never tried. It impacted my even agency to think I could push the door open until someone else pushed it right in front of me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, my thought limited my options. And so your thoughts. And so I'm going to read one. She said, I've been holding out to tell my husband I want a divorce until COVID loosens restrictions. Then this past weekend, he tore his Achilles heel on his driving foot. I'm feeling trapped, having to serve him while I'm doing it with a loving heart. I'm dying inside. Okay, so that is curious to me, because truly, Jesus, if you're doing it with a loving heart, you don't need to be dying inside, right? So there's something else going on that you need to check that. So just pay attention to your language. I'm doing it with a loving heart. I'm dying inside. Can I still tell him He's not emotionally even handling his injury very well. I'm stuck. So pay attention to your language. So you're boxing yourself in here by some of your language. I don't think you need to be stuck. And I think you can. So your husband's going to have to handle some hard news. One is he tore his heel. He tore his Achilles heel. And the other bad news is, hey, I am so sorry you tore your Achilles heel. And I am not willing to help you through this. But I need you to know that our marriage is a mess and you've got more than your Achilles heel to deal with because I'm going to be filing for divorce. And if you want to tell him, you can. You're not stuck. You just need to make a decision on what you think strategically is best for you and the kids. Not just best for him. What strategically is best for you and the kids? And if it's best for you and the kids to not tell him so that he doesn't become violent or rant and rave while you're still in the house, then don't tell him. But you have choices here. And think about what's best for you and the kids, not just what's best for him. And even staying there and helping him, he has other options. He has other options, okay? If he tore his Achilles heel, what if he lived alone? He would figure it out. He could call an Uber for work. You could learn to drive with your other foot. There are things you can do. Take public transportation to work from home. You don't have to put yourself in this box of I have no other options, nor does he.
Well, and that's one of those mindset pieces, Leslie, that you spoke about earlier, because I'm going to give you a visual. So play with me if you want to. If you have free hands, do this, right? And so here you are, you've kind of got some tunnel vision. Now try to look to the right or to the left with your eyes. You can't see very far. This is one of those, I am stuck. I have no choices. I have no options. I have to take care of my husband's Achilles tendon, whatever. Now open it up a little bit more. Now look to the right or left. Oh, wow. I can see it. There's a little bit more light coming in. I can see a little bit more. Okay, now go just a little more. Holy smokes. I mean, look at even the light on my face. So the light on Leslie's face is completely different than where it was here. Look at that difference. I mean, visually, that's such a huge space. And so the more we are open to see and open up the peripheral vision, sometimes it's helpful, ladies, brainstorm, write down, what are my options right now? Because in the moment, that stress place that we go, we think that our options are limited. We think that we're right here, when in actuality, there is a lot more that we can't see if we have the I'm stuck. If you're using your 2% to say I'm stuck, of course, you're not going to see anything different. And we're here to help you.
Yeah, and that's why we can't see it all by ourselves. That's why we need one another. That's why in Conquer, we're so powerful, because we do grow stronger together. That's why when I was looking at that gate, for those of you who know the story in San Diego, when I was looking at that gate and it looked locked to me because it had a big old lock on it, I never even thought in a million years that it wasn't locked. It looked locked. And I wouldn't have thought to just push it to see if it wasn't locked. But when my sister Emily came along and she got out of the Uber and she looked at the lock and pushed the door open, my jaw just went, oh my gosh, because it would have never even been an option for me. I wouldn't have even thought that I was wrong, because it's locked and you don't push open locked doors. That's what you don't do. So you might not be able to see. And that's why in CORE, and some of you don't know what CORE is yet, you're getting a little taste of it. CORE. I am open to wise others. So that when I saw what Emily did, it was like, wow, she didn't have this belief it was locked, and she had a choice that I didn't know that I had. Just push open the door, it wasn't locked, right? But this is what the community does for you. This is what Facebook does for you. When you read, well, this is what I did when my husband tore his Achilles heel. I did this. This is what I did when I had to file. This is what I did when my lawyer was going to. And it's like, oh, I never thought I could do that. I never realized I had those options. I didn't realize that I could make different choices. And we don't always realize that. That's why I love Leanne here on here with me, because sometimes I don't say everything and she can say something that I'm not saying, or vice versa, that nobody has it all together all the time and has all 52 cards in the deck. And that's why God says, We need one another to encourage one another, support one another, give each other ideas. And that's why in the Facebook feed, as you're sharing some of your stuck places, please no shame in that. I'm stuck too at times. And I'll call people or I'll call my coach. Hey, I'm not sure what to do with this. I'm really stuck. I don't know. I don't see the options I have. And when someone starts talking and saying, well, have you tried this? And, no, I didn't. Oh, I never thought of that. I never thought of that. It's okay because I'm a finite, limited human being. I'm not going to know everything. God didn't give me a know everything brain. That's humility. Humility is saying, I don't know how to do this, but I can ask. I can figure it out. I'm not stuck. I might be stuck right in the moment, but I'm not stuck forever.
So good. Yeah, that is that, this is what I see. Oh, then Leslie will say something. Oh, I see an opportunity or another way to look at it. Oh, and then somebody else posts and somebody else posts. And, here's the other beautiful thing that I just want to feel really led to interject. Invite God into your vision. Invite him in to help you navigate this time when we can feel confused and stuck. It's often an opportunity where God is tapping us on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm right here. Invite me in. I am right ready to walk with you and hold your hand through this.
Mm-hmm. So these are a couple quick questions. Husband says quite a bit that everything that comes out of my mouth is BS. I've stopped sharing my thoughts and fears on most days, but it's lonely. How do I deal with this? Well, I think it's wise to stop when someone is constantly mocking or criticizing your thoughts. Jesus tells you, don't cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them and then turn and attack you. So your pearls are the essence of who you are, your thoughts, your feelings, your desires, your needs. And when you share those with people who trample them and mock them and disdain them, you're ridiculous, you're crazy, what's wrong with you? Yeah, you don't want to open up for sure, right? And nor should you. That's part of guarding your heart, right? You're being wise here, but it is lonely. So that's part of why I think God is saying, don't put all your eggs in the marriage basket. I think we've, in our United States culture, and in research is bearing this out. Esther Perel is a psychologist in the secular world, and she talks a lot about this, that marriage is not the penultimate of your life, nor is it meant to be your soulmate, your savior, your best friend, your companion, your provider. I mean, we've put so many eggs in this basket, like he's got to be my everything, like Jerry Maguire, you complete me. It's a myth. It's a lie. That's not what marriage is. Surely marriage is to be a safe, a relationship of love and trust, but it's not your everything. And so maybe you're married to a great man who isn't very deep in the soul searching department. And you might need a soul sister to go with and dig deeper and talk deeper about things. There's nothing destructive about him other than he's just a bit boring and superficial, right? That doesn't mean it's a destructive marriage necessarily. It might be a disappointing one, right? But how are you going to get your need for deeper conversation and deeper connection met? It might be with some good girlfriends. That's okay. God wants you to have good girlfriends. Jonathan's heart was knit to the heart of David's in a deep male friendship, not a homosexual relationship, at least I don't believe it was that, but they had a deep, close friendship. Naomi and Ruth were tied together, even though she was her mother-in-law. They had a deep female friendship. God calls us to have good friendships. And so don't put all your eggs in the marriage basket, even if you have a good marriage. I mean, Leanne just had a neighbor whose husband died, just fell over dead. Your husband sooner or later is going to be gone through the death or divorce because we outlive them. And you need your girlfriends. Make sure you make them. And in Conquer, this is a place that if you have trouble with girlfriends, you have trouble with relationships, maybe because there's some fear in you or some hurt in you or some resentment in you or some toxicity in you that you need to learn about in relationships with us. And learning to build those healthy female friends is a good start right here. All right, let's see.
Hey, Leslie, I just saw a feed and this is tagging off of a question earlier. It said, apologies are nice, but they don't change the years of abuse though. Apologies aren't erasers. And then she follows it up and says, so we must do our own work. And so just remember your I love that.
I love that apologies are not erasers.
They're not erasers.
I may use that. In a
I
blog.
know. And so we can thank
Yeah.
Lizzie for that. That's Lizzie's comment on the feed. And so thank you for that. I think that that's extremely powerful to remember.
And it's interesting because I'm going to be speaking to some different pastors, and I think the churches do see apologies as erasers. And I think that this is clarity for you. Apologies are not erasers. And when you look at the Bible in its whole, and God cares about relationships. And if you read through, I don't know if you've ever read through the Old Testament, if you read through Deuteronomy, Exodus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, the Lord is helping the Jewish community build community. So they had the 10 Commandments now. They're having to learn to live together as a Jewish people. And there's no laws like we have in our land. There's nothing. And so they're trying to create community together so that you don't mess up relationships, because relationships are really important. So God gives the 10 Commandments, and then he gives all these regulations. And sometimes when we're tempted to read through the Bible, we're kind of like, oh, I don't want to skip this. It's all this law stuff. We don't do law stuff anymore. But it's very interesting when you read through it, because all this detail, like if your ox, just as an example, if your ox escapes your fence and your neighbor finds your ox, he's to return your ox. He doesn't keep it for himself. But if your ox escapes your fence and does damage to your neighbor's fence, you need to pay for that and make restitution. It's not enough just to say, sorry, it's not an eraser. And if you knew your ox was a bad ox who tended to escape from his fence, you need to pay him double, because you didn't take responsibility for taking care of fixing your fence that your ox could escape from. So all these teeny little details, God is concerned about community. He's concerned when we do things that damage relationships, when we hurt our neighbor, or our property hurts our neighbor, or our ox hurts our neighbor. We're not to just say sorry. We're to make restitution. We're to fix it. We're to make amends. And I think the church is really negligent on that somehow sorry erases the need to show and make repairs and amends to the relationship as best as possible, so that there is genuine repentance that's shown, not just apologies that are given expecting an eraser of the consequences. So you're right. That's so good, because if you're waiting for all of that, you're going to stay stuck. You don't have to wait there. That's your choice. All right. So here are some other questions that I want to get to. I feel stuck because my husband has given up and I have a job offer in Texas and I can leave, but I'm afraid if I leave, I am giving up too soon. I'm afraid if I don't take it, I won't find another opportunity. So you don't think there'll be another job offer ever given to you again in your entire life if you don't take this one? That might be a limiting belief. If you're offered a job in this COVID-19 in Texas, I imagine you have some pretty good credentials that might give you a job. I'm not saying don't take it. I'm saying this is a limiting belief that I'm afraid I might not ever get another job offer. So the question becomes, what do you think God wants you to do? And if your husband isn't working and you're not working, who's supporting the family? And I don't know those details, but I think you can wrestle through those questions.
And there's some great, I think it's really powerful, Leslie, that to look at our situation and some of the choices that we have, again, do a brain dump on it. Mm-hmm. See what the pros and cons would be for you.
Yeah, and there's a video on that in your Conquer library, but let me just give you the cliff notes of it. So this is a pros and cons dump. What are the pros? I kind of put it this way. What are the best things that can happen if I don't take this job in Texas and I stay? What are the worst things that could happen if I don't take this job in Texas and can stay? And then the next quadrant is, what are the best things that could happen if I take this job in Texas and don't stay? What are the worst things that could happen if I take this job in Texas and don't stay? So you're doing best and worst with both different scenes, and you'll see pretty much more clearly what's going on.
Yeah, right? And I love that tool. Ben Carson, those of you who are familiar with him, he's a brain surgeon a surgeon who separates conjoined twins. And do you know that he uses that method when he was doing his surgeries, for every surgery, he will ask those 4 quadrant questions before he even approaches having a consultation with the family. It's powerful, ladies, when we can look at that. I love that you brought that up, Leslie. So, so good.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's more than just a pro con.
Yeah.
We, the world will call it pro con, but when we dig deeper, we have an opportunity to see what the options are.
All right. So here are 2 questions that might go together. How do you embrace the possibility of a fallout? And I think I'm just going to answer that real quickly. There's always the possibility of a fallout. You don't have control over no fallouts in your life. Who ever thought our culture and country would fall apart with COVID-19? So I think healthy people embrace the possibility of anything might happen, that we can't control the outcome. And so we don't put our trust in what might happen or what might not happen. We put our trust in God that is in charge of life. And so then we don't have to fear. So I'm just going to be real honest. When COVID-19 happened, because we're the age we are, we had a lot of money in the stock market and we lost a lot of money because the stock market plunged. And I started to fret like, okay, I don't know how much longer I want, am I going to have to work another 20 years? I don't know if I'll even live another 20 years. And, I started having these thoughts and started having these fears. I'm thinking, I can't control the stock market. I can't control COVID-19 stuff. I can't control any of that. I trust God. I know God. If I lose all of our retirement in the stock market, I guess I'll be in a new adventure that I didn't know about, but God is with me. And so whatever happens, I'll deal with it. And once I decided that, all those what if, just went away. It's like, okay, I don't want to be stupid, but I can't control this. So when we're always living like I did with my pregnancy, what if, you have to embrace. If it happens, I'll deal with it. But if I think about it every day, I've got my grandkids with me. I would give my life for them. And I had an incident once when I was at the post office in Pennsylvania, and my daughter called and she goes, I've lost. Her oldest jumped out of the stroller when she was putting the other child in the car seat and was gone. And so for half an hour, she could not find her 2-year-old. And it was the scariest moment of my life. And I said, God, I don't know if I can trust you with this. I don't know if I can trust you with this. I mean, sometimes life deals us, if finally she found her inside the Target, but life deals us with scary things. And sometimes we don't know that we can trust God. And that's honest. I'm just telling you, that's what I said. I don't know if I can trust you with this. But I have my grandkids right here. I don't want anything bad to happen here, but I can't live as if it might. If it happens, I'll deal with it. They break their leg or, burn their hand or whatever, I'll deal with it. But I can't say, oh, I don't want them to come because what if I can't deal with the fallout? I don't want to live that way. So you have to decide whether you want to live that way. I sure don't. So I live trusting God that whatever happens, he will give me the strength to deal with it. Change takes time. My husband says he wants to change, and now we are in-house separated. How can I make it clear to him that I am not willing to reconcile and work on the relationship until I see change over at least 6 months? Oops. Every time Martha puts a new question in, it gets, let's see here. I lost it. Anyway, I can't find the question now, but my statement to you is, you said it really clearly in here. How do you just say to him, hey, I'm not willing to work on our marriage till you do the work on your stuff that broke apart our marriage, right? And once you've done your work, then I'm willing to talk about working on a marriage. I mean, you said it perfectly as I was reading it. So I think you can say that. I think what you're meaning is, how can I get him to like that?
That's not your deal.
Yeah, that's not under your power. You can say it and you can hold your boundaries. You can't make him like it, but him not liking it and him resisting it will show you whether he's serious about doing what he needs to do. So here, let me give you an illustration. Let's say that I needed a heart transplant. I don't, but let's say I needed a heart transplant and the doctor says, hey, Leslie, before you can have a heart transplant, you need to lose 20 pounds because your odds of surviving a heart transplant are much better if you lose these 20 pounds, you're overweight or 50 pounds or whatever it is. So I'm not willing to do the heart transplant until you're willing to show me that you give up smoking and that you're willing to do a healthy diet, because I don't want to waste this heart on you if I can give it to somebody else who's willing to live healthy. All right. So that's good stewardship. That's good stewardship of someone else's heart that they're going to put in my body. And if I'm going to still smoke and I'm going to still overeat and have cholesterol and all that kind of stuff, that's going to wreck the second heart. Why would the doctor give me this heart? So do your work, Leslie. And if you do your work, I will let you have a heart transplant. That's sort of what you're saying to your husband, that, hey, I'm not willing to put this together again if the things that broke it apart. So I'm not willing to give you a new heart if the things that trashed your heart to begin with, smoking and overeating, are not changed in your life. Those things need to change so that when we give you a new heart, you're not taxing this new heart in the same way you tax the old heart. And in the same way, the marriage relationship is precious. And when that's been shattered and broken by whatever your husband's done, he needs to do some work before you come back and try to repair this relationship. Because if he hasn't, the very things that broke the marriage in the first place will re-break the marriage in the second place if he hasn't done his work, right? Because we're creatures of habits. That's what I said in the webinar. And so you don't have to apologize for that. But if the doctor said that to me, I would get that. I wouldn't like it. But it would show whether I'm serious about the heart transplant, right? If I really want the heart transplant, I'm going to have to give up smoking and I have to do my work and eating better. And I will show my doctor over time, look, lost the weight, haven't smoked in 6 months, I'm ready for my heart transplant. And if I'm just blowing smoke and want the easy way out, I want a heart transplant, but I don't want to really do the work, I'm not going to do the work. The doctor's going to be able to tell in 6 months that I haven't done the work. My cardio is still bad. My weight is still bad. My oxygen levels are still bad because I'm smoking. And so why would he give me a new heart? It's very similar picture. How do I handle that my marriage was already bad and an action on my part made it worse? This is really important now. However, my husband doesn't realize how his behavior, neglect, emotional, verbal abuse contributed to my one-time action. Here's where you're not taking total responsibility. So I suspect that you're, and I don't know, I'm suspecting that you had a sexual indiscretion with someone else. All right. So how do I handle it? So it's easy for us as women to want to say, well, if you had been a better husband, I wouldn't have been tempted to have an affair. And that may be true. That may be true. Although, truth be told, I've had a pretty good husband, but there's been times I've been tempted to have an affair, right? There's just been opportunities that you just say, and I say no to that, but you've been tempted. I'm tempted to do all kinds of things. Jesus was tempted in every way as we are. So we still have choices in our temptation. And you have to own that 100%. Just like when you mouth off to your husband or you're disrespectful to your husband might, or your child. I have been tempted when when my children mouth off to me, when they were littler, teenagers, preteens, I've been tempted to go right across their mouth because my mother used to do that to me. I never did it, but I've been tempted. But I had to own, I don't want to do that. So whatever you did that hurt your marriage is 100% your responsibility. And I don't say that lightly. Because if your husband said, well, I hit her because she was disrespectful, I would say, whatever you did, it was 100% your responsibility. It's your responsibility to manage your temptations. If you're tempted, flee temptation. That's what the Bible tells you. Don't play with it. So if you're getting tempted to smack your kid, you got to take a time out and take care of you, do your work. If you're tempted to have an affair and you don't want to do that in your big circle, then do what you need to do to not do that. So don't ask him to take partial responsibility for that. Just like if your husband hit you, I would never ask you to take partial responsibility for him hitting you. Or if your husband cheated on you because you were saying, I'm having a boundary, I'm not having sex with you because you're watching porn. He goes, okay, well then I'll go meet with a prostitute. Well, that's his decision. It is not your fault. So I'm going to reverse it. The same that goes for him goes for you. You are 100% responsible for how you've contributed to the damage in your marriage. Right? And so here's where you each have your own work to do. I have my work to do because when I was angry and hurt, I made a very stupid choice. I have my work to do so that when I'm angry and hurt again, because if we make this marriage work, I probably will get angry and hurt again. So if I'm angry and hurt and make stupid choices, I need to learn how to not do that. And you need to learn when you're angry and hurt, you make stupid choices too, different ones. You didn't have an affair, or you didn't do whatever I did, but you yell, you curse, you put me down, you know, whatever you do. And that hurts our marriage. And so you have to learn how to handle your frustration and your emotions. Neither one of you have handled your emotions in a healthy, mature way. Your disappointed, hurt emotions. And that's part of your own work to do. So it's not about how you can get him to see that he's at fault for what you did. Just like if a husband came to me and said, well, Leslie, my wife needs to see how the way she talks to me, that's why I blow up at her. I would say, I can understand that the way that she talks to you upsets you very much, but it's your responsibility to handle how you handle that. That's your own work to do. That's the clarity that you need. That's the clarity your husband needs, because you can't grow and mature if it's always everybody else's fault that you act that way. If I lose my temper when I'm driving because someone cut me off and gave me the finger, and I get so mad I crash into their car and the police stop me, who's getting the ticket? I am. I'm responsible for me. And so you're responsible for you in whatever happened here. Okay. I am currently separated and living outside the home due to verbally abusive, emotional, destructive marriage and my husband's continued poor choices. My counselor asked me to write a letter of expectations for my husband to fulfill in order to return home. He believes that my list is unrealistic and refuses to get a job. He, meaning your husband, I assume, not your counselor. My husband believes that the list is unrealistic and refuses to get a job, but expects me to pay the mortgage so he can continue to live in our house. The entitlement mentality is oppressive. At this point, after a year of separation, I feel like even if he did the things on the list, I don't want to return. Is that wrong of me to feel that way? You want to take that one, Leah?
That one's a super common question.
Yes.
And thank you for that question. You know, working a list, it's really easy for a man to work a list and not have changed behavior in the heart. And so I think I'm not having that question in front of me to refer back to is a little bit challenging to make sure I stay on task, but addressing the list. I love that you're writing down kind of maybe what your non-negotiables are. I think that's important for you to know that for you. That list, you know, the list can be for you to help you establish and formulate some boundaries about what you will and will not tolerate. But I think, gosh, Les, I wish I had the question in front of me. Shoot.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the long one. Yeah.
No, that's okay. Yeah, help me with what else you asked, because there was a lot in there.
They're separated. They're living outside the home. She wrote this list. He thinks it's unrealistic, but he
Yes.
wants her to pay the mortgage because he's living in the house. She's not living in the house. He wants her to pay the mortgage because he's
Of
living.
course he thinks it's unrealistic. Let's just stop there. I want to validate. He of course is going to think it's realistic because he would rather not do the work. And so, you know, you get to decide whether or not it's realistic for you, for your boundary. And he, you know, you can't control how he perceives the list coming back. Maybe you do have some unrealistic things on there. You know, we can't be all things to everybody. So that's a checkpoint that you get to do. So what else was there left?
And so the second thing is she feels that even if he did everything on the list, she doesn't want to go back to him. And is she wrong?
Yeah, great information for you. Nobody is going to know whether you're wrong or not. Only you're going to need to know that. You know, that's the thing here in Conquer. We would love for all of our ladies to just say, yay, I cheer you on, leave the jerk, whatever. No, that's not our role. Our role is to help you connect vertically with God so that your horizontal relationships can bring glory here. And so I guess if you're feeling that in your heart, take a little bit of a personal inventory. What is going on inside of you that is, you know, red flagging or green flagging to you of stay or go, and get very, very clear and claim the promises, because when the rubber meets the road, you are accountable to yourself and to your God for the decisions that you make.
Yeah.
And so, you know, living, oh boy, we're going to be talking real big as the steps go on about that big circle. And are your thoughts about not being willing or not wanting to go back, are they a fear-based decision? Is it a faith-based decision? Is it coming out of who you are, or looking at the circumstances in a split-second decision? Yeah. So that's just one thought.
And let me just add to that a little bit. I don't think it's wrong for you to feel that way. I think that most women in this site feel the way that I would rather not be married to this man. All right. So I don't think you should feel wrong for having those feelings. When someone hurts us, disrespects us, doesn't support us, and just aggravates us a lot, even if they're basically a good person, we might have those feelings from time to time. All right. I bet if we were honest, we might have even had those feelings towards our children at times. Like, I wish I didn't have children right now. I wish I had made a decision to have less children. I wish I didn't have this child. You know, we don't say that, but we've felt that. So I just want to clarify this for just a minute. We are going to have some really yucky and disturbing thoughts and feelings that we are like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? All right. And instead of beating yourself up for having them, be curious. Ask yourself, where did that come from? Why am I feeling this feeling? Why am I thinking that thought? And maybe there is no logical explanation. Maybe it's just a crazy thought. Sometimes we do have crazy thoughts, even like, oh, I wish I was dead, or I wish he was dead, or, you know, I feel like I could kill somebody. You know, I remember talking to a friend who was being taken to court by a family member, and she was so angry. She said, I could kill him. She goes, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have that thought. We have bad thoughts sometimes. We have negative feelings sometimes that another part of us steps back and says, whoa, where'd that come from? That part of you that stepped back and said, whoa, where did that come from? That's called your big circle. And we're going to talk about that as we move into the next steps of the module. There's more to you than your thoughts and your feelings. You have thoughts and feelings. But when you recognize them and you're saying, ooh, I don't like them. I don't like that I feel so resentful. I don't like that I feel so full of hatred. I don't like that I'm thinking I'd like to kill him. I don't like that I have these feelings. I don't like that I have these thoughts. Well, who is the I that doesn't like these? That's your big circle. That's your big circle. So we're going to start paying attention to her. So don't shut it down when you feel it. Recognize that there's an out of alignment. Oh, what is this? You see, because if there's alignment, if you are fine with what you feel, if you're fine with what you think, there's no misalignment, right? Like if I think having an affair is fine, and I'm, you know, I'm being tempted to have an affair, and I don't think there's anything wrong with cheating, and I cheat, and I don't feel any guilt, I'm aligned with my core values. Pleasure is my core value, and whenever I can get it, I want it, right? That's my core value. But when I'm having this little tension, like, why am I thinking this? Why am I, we're out of alignment with our core values. And that's really important information for you to get clarity. Like, who's the real me? This is what Paul wrestled with in Romans 7 when he said, oh, I'm doing what I don't want to do, and I'm not doing what I want to do. Who's the I? His big circle is saying, I'm not living in alignment with who I am. And that is really important clarifying information for you so that you can realign. And we all get to spots like that. So don't beat yourself up for this feeling. It's okay. We all have it. Even in good marriages, sometimes you say, I wonder if I'd be happier without this, right? It's okay. And you say, whoa, where'd that come from? Pay attention, be curious, ask questions. And especially if the part of you that's saying, I don't want this feeling. I don't like this feeling. This upsets me that I feel this way. That's your big circle saying, these aren't my values. These aren't my values. Well, what are your values? And put them down, and we'll begin to unpack that in later modules. But good work, good work. That self-awareness is really, really important.
It is. And, you know, we talk a lot about, and we started in the clarity module talking about the CO, right? That the C of being courageously committed to truth. And that's what you're doing as you're unpacking this, is you're realizing your reality, your truth, and you're not wanting to pretend anymore. And so you're bringing that to the table. You're bringing that to the table. And so congratulations.
But we have to be careful about that one thing. Hold on, I'm getting a little short of breath here. We have to be careful about that one thing where we're talking about our feelings as our truth, because our feelings are temporary. So I can feel like I don't want my children for a minute or two, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I love my children, I want them, of course, you know, even my dog. like this is a lot of work. Maybe I shouldn't have gotten her, but I would never want most of me wants her all over me, right? So I think we need to be careful that our feelings are important to pay attention to. They're not always the penultimate of truth. So here's where it comes, and we'll talk more in detail about this as we look, so that you get healthy. So being in alignment. So when my feelings match my values, match my thoughts, I'm on fire. I'm on fire, right? So when I'm feeling And when I'm thinking positive, true thoughts, God loves me, I'm feeling strong, I'm feeling competent, I'm feeling like giving and doing good things, I'm all aligned. I'm feeling really good about all that. When I'm out of alignment, right? So let's say, so it's 7 o'clock this morning. I woke up at 5:45. I had to get in the shower. This morning wasn't bad, but some mornings I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. My feelings don't want to do it, right? But I made this commitment. So what do I do? Are my feelings my truth? Are my feelings my feelings going, oh, it's too early. I don't want to get on Facebook Live. I don't want to get in a cold shower. That's my thoughts. My feelings are, I'm tired. This is too hard. Do they get to make the decision? I'm aware of them. I'm aware of them. But my core value is, of course I want to do this. I love doing this. I love you guys. I want to show up. And I don't want to show up looking like bedhead. So I'm going to have to get up a little early to do something. Because when you sleep with short hair, it's like just sticks up in a big cone when you wake up. So I've got to do something. So I've got to get up and get ready and be here. So my feelings aren't my final truth, right? My core values are. And that's how I make my decision to get up and be here. I don't let my feelings decide. However, if I were having chest pains in light of what I've been feeling lately and shortness of breath when I got up, I might have said to Leanne, you take over, I'm going to go to the ER, right? So I would have let my feelings inform me, and my core value of I need to take good care of my health would have been more important than showing up because Leanne could show up, right? So those are the discernment meters that we use as we're making decisions. And we don't always have the same decision in every situation. But that's why it's so important that you get clarity so that you know yourself. Not so much, clarity about out here too, like what's really going on out here, but clarity is also a lot about what's going on in here. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? Who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? Who am I? Because my husband says I'm a loser. My husband says I'm stupid. My husband says I don't have a valuable thing to say in all of the world. Is that true? Is he right? Or is that not true? I have to decide that. He doesn't get to decide that. He can have his opinion. There are people who think I'm crazy too. There are people who thought Jesus was crazy. They can have their opinion, but who are you? And who decides?
So good. Yeah. If I told Leslie right now, Leslie, I really don't like your blue hair. I really it's kind of not an attractive color on you. Your blue hair is not good. You would go, Leanne, I don't have blue hair. You're not seeing me clearly. I do not have blue hair. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
If our husband says, we go, is it blue? Oh my gosh, I never thought it was blue. It must be blue.
I know, we might think
I've got blue hair. I better go to the hairdresser and tell him, get rid of this blue hair. My hair product's awful right now. But yeah, so this is where that strengthening will come in, and that confidence. Wait a minute, that's not true. That's not true. They're telling me, I remember, somebody said, oh, Leslie, you're trying to break up marriages. You have a Jezebel spirit. Like, oh, really? I've got on my knees. Lord, is that true? Oh, that's not true. That's not true. People will say all kinds of things about you, right? Including people that you know and love, right? That's not true. That's not true. Even good things, all right? So here's the problem of the leader. Oh, you're wonderful. You're amazing. That's not true either, right? That's not true either. I'm a fallible human being who has wonderful moments and horrible moments, and hopefully more of one than the other. But hey, I'm just like you. Put your shoes on, one shoe at a time, pull your pants up, you do all the things every normal human being does, right? And so I'm not as wonderful as you think, I'm not as horrible as you think, and I don't give you the power to decide me. And that's part of clarity. That's part of clarity, that you get really crystal clear on who God says you are and who you have been made to be, because God hasn't made us all the same. When I think about my husband, I'm thinking, you actually, like, he loves reading directions, like pages and pages of directions. I'm like, you really like that? Like, I would have to like slip my wrists and do something else besides read pages and pages of directions. If I had to save my life, I would, but I don't like it. He likes it. Like, I don't understand that, but he does. Everybody's different. God's wired is different.
Yes, and we get to take that, into account as we are navigating all of these conversations that we're having and, claiming what makes us unique and beautiful.
Yeah. I'm going to answer one more question and then we're going to close up for today. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look at the Clarity module again, if you haven't looked at it, and go through some of the videos that you think would be most helpful. If you're just starting, let me just tell you ones that I think would be really, really important. So if you're just starting, the things that we've emphasized today are the change begins with you and you have choices. That's really, really important that you have choices. And then video number 6 and 7 on victimization and confusion, those would also be very clarifying for you in the very beginning steps. If you've got those things down and you want to learn more about covert abuse or you want to learn more about trauma bonds, then go on to that. But don't get lost in the weeds about those details because that focuses more on clarity here, right? We want you to be clear here. I have choices. I don't have to live like a victim. We want you to get clear in here. So there's clarity here. There's clarity here. What's happening out here? Oh, that's what's happening. That's great. But if you're not clear here, it comes out here and then comes in here and gets all twisted and muddled again. So you really want to be clear. So take the time to watch video 1, video 2, maybe video 3 if you have time, but video 1 and video 2, and video 6 and video 7. Those would be the 4 most important ones in this module. So let's do the last question and then we're going to go. I need to tell my husband that I will be filing for divorce. I want to tell him coming from a place of love and compassion. Is there a module in Conquer that may address the best possible way to approach this? I don't think so. I think there's lots of different scripts throughout the Conquer journey about addressing your husband's issues with love and compassion, but I'll give you a couple of samples and maybe Leanne, you can think of a couple samples too. So I don't know the history and the details, so I'm going to leave those part blank, but I'll tell you where to put them in. Can we have a conversation? I've made a decision that I need to talk to you about. And then, so make sure it's a good time because this is a tough conversation and you're not going to rush it. And then think through how you want to say it. Plan, prepare. I talk about that, how to have a tough conversation with someone. Plan, prepare, pray, practice. So you're going to plan how you want to say this. You're going to prepare. You're going to actually write it down. You're going to pray about it to see if there's anything else you should say. And then you're going to practice. And I want you to share with him your decision about that in terms of, so I'm just going to make up details, but you're going to fill in the details. So I've made a decision about our marriage. We've been having a lot of marital problems and you and I have been going back and forth for a long time. We've been in counseling. We've been in pastoral counseling. Each of us have been in counseling. And I've come to understand that we're just not, I don't know why you've made this decision, but whatever that is, so I'll make up something. We have such different values. You believe that it's okay to watch porn. You believe it's, acceptable for a Christian man to watch porn and for us to watch porn as a couple and, for you to have extramarital affairs as long as you're sorry. It doesn't eat on your conscience like I would think it would for a Christian. I'm not judging. I'm just saying I'm curious about that, but it doesn't seem to bother you that you've done it 4 or 5 times already in our marriage. And I'm just not wired that way. I can't trust you. I don't know that I'll ever trust you again because of what you've done. And because you don't seem to have convictions against doing your work so that you don't do it again, I don't think I can stay married to you. And I've made a decision to divorce, not because I hate you. I wish it could have been different, but I respect your right to choose. And your decision not to go for help and not to change these patterns has made me take stock of what my decisions need to be. And so out of respect for your decisions, I'm making a decision that I can no longer be married to you because I can't trust you. And I don't want to live with someone I can't trust. So those would be a loving way of saying that, I'm letting you make your decisions. You don't want to get help. You don't want to change. You don't want to work on things that have broken our marriage. I can't continue to live as if this doesn't matter to me. It matters to me. Maybe to another woman it doesn't matter to, but it matters to me. And I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't have a relationship. And I think this is where the church makes a mistake. You can stay legally married, but is that honoring God to stay legally married and be full of fear or hate or disgust or contempt at someone else's choices? because they're untrustworthy and they're harmful? Or is it honoring God to just be honest? I can't do this. I don't know how to do relationship with someone who I can't trust. I mean, I don't even know how to do friendship with someone I can't trust. I mean, Leanne and I are friends, and you know, and if I didn't trust her, I mean, I could have a conversation with her. I could, you know, talk about something, but I couldn't be a friend of hers if I didn't trust her, right? So I think even doing close friendship, it's hard to do that when you don't trust someone, and you're afraid they're going to hurt you or harm you or tell something about you or do something awful to you. You can't have even a friendship. So trust is really important in a relationship, and when that's broken in marriage, it has to be rebuilt. Leanne, you want to give a stab at it? Try it.
Yeah, no, I just echo everything that you said, Leslie. You just say it so beautifully. Doesn't she just do such a good job? The other thing, you know, when you talked about plan, prepare, and practice, that's super important, because like we spoke about at the beginning of this video, your words matter. And the energy that you're bringing to the table around the words that you choose to use as you speak to yourself and as you speak to other people, they really do have a tremendous impact. And just like so many of us here in Conquer, we want gracious words back to us from our significant others, whoever they might be, our kiddos, our spouses, whoever we're in challenge with. We are responsible for the words that we choose. And so I would just echo that no matter what conversation that you're going to have or want to have, prayerfully consider how it is you want to approach those conversations. It's okay to push pause, to stop, to think about, and to be careful of the words that you choose. You know, it's interesting because, being real here, there's been some stuff going on in my world, and I was bringing something up to my husband this week, and he said, wow, before you talk to me about this, be careful about how you're going to say it, because I'm going to have to answer that. And I remember years ago praying through, do not ask the question, girlfriends, if you're not ready to receive the answer. And that's part of our work to do, is be ready. God wants us to be mindful. He cares more about who you are than he does about, and he cares about your well-being so deeply. And, you know, I remember, Leslie, early on when I first started my Conquer journey, and even following you for all these years, this is a real spot that I found myself in. When you used to say the word, and you still say it, you've even said it, I think, in the video today, the word deformed. And you cautioned us against that. That word rubbed me wrong for so long. And I had to ask myself why that word rubbed me wrong. And I had to come to the spot, you know, in my own self to go, yeah, there was areas in my life that were deformed, and I had to be willing to, you know, I was twisted up like a pretzel. And I had to be willing to unwrap that pretzel so I could fully give it over to God. Because when I was like this, all tightened up and deformed in my thinking, I couldn't. I was too bound up to release it to God. And so I don't even know where I was going with all of that, except my heart is so for you women. There's going to be a lot of stuff that comes up for you in this clarity module. There is so much here. When I was reviewing it, I was overwhelmed. 9 videos, over almost 3 hours worth of information. For those of you who haven't, it's Change Begins With You. And that is the biggest thing, our choices. We're always at choice. Be responsible to yourself and to others. Change your dance steps. Remember that there are different kinds of abuse, covert and overt. Victimization, you can overcome and conquer that. You can conquer the confusion. And there are bonds that you're going to want to be aware of, toxic and trauma bonds. All of that is in there. But walk in a step by step, because you don't want to be deformed.
Yeah. Yeah. And just think of this conversation as a compassionate conversation.
Yes.
When we talk about, when we talk about speaking the truth in love to someone, and again, I'll use a medical example. Let's say that your doctor had to tell you that you were dying, that he discovered in your CAT scan that you had recurring breast cancer or stage 4 pancreatic cancer, something like that. And so he had to tell you that you were dying, because that's what you're telling your husband, that your marriage is dying, right? And that you're going to file the death certificate. You're telling him he's dead. Or let's say you're an ER doctor and you have to go and tell somebody in the waiting room that the patient died. Okay. Not a pleasant task, not a pleasant task at all. You have to speak the truth, but you want to have a compassionate conversation. And so I think to be able to prepare for that and think about how I can speak this bad news. You know, I need to share with you my heart. This is not good news. Our marriage is dead, and I can't pretend that we've tried to resuscitate. However, you're going to, you don't have to use those words, but basically you're going to say our marriage is dead. I've done what I can do to resuscitate it. You don't want to do what you want to do to resuscitate, or you've tried to. However, you want to be compassionate. This is hard. I want to do what's best for us. I don't want to take you to the cleaners. I don't want to hurt our children. If possible, I'd like us to, and that's not possible with some of these guys. It's just not possible to have a collaborative divorce. But if possible, you know, I want to work together. It will be better for our children, better for our finances if we don't fight a lot about this, so that we can agree. I'm willing to work with you. And in your mind, you need to say, but I'm also not willing to be taken advantage of. But I'm willing to work with you to bring a peaceful resolution of this. But it's dead. The patient's dead. And when a doctor would tell a client that, or a family member in the waiting room, the delivery is everything. The news is bad, but the delivery is everything. You know, whether a doctor comes in and says, sorry to inform you, your mother died, like, that's it, you know, or coming and pacing yourself, you know, we've done everything, you know, they pace themselves. They give you a chance to absorb it. We've done everything we can do. We tried defibrillating, we resuscitated. You already know she's dead, but he's not gotten to that word yet, but he's giving you a chance to absorb that bad news, right? I am so sorry your mother died, right? So he's kind of leading up to that. Well, you need some practice and you need some preparation to do that well. And so take some time to write out, what were the things that you tried? What were the things that you did together to try to keep your marriage alive? What were the things that you did that he wasn't willing to do, that you can't continue to do, whatever it is, so that you, when you say the marriage is dead and I'm filing the death certificate, which is the divorce document, you've been compassionate about, I know this is, hard and I'm so sorry, but this is my final decision, right? So that you can kind of think through it and maybe that framework. All right.
And it's okay. I've come to conversations with my pad and paper and say, I'm Leanne in and of herself is going to get emotional and I'm going to let my feelings drive me, and that's not okay. But what I am learning is this. And so I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. I have come to my husband that way because I can get in my own way. And there's a lot of beautiful script ideas. You're going to see in the feed below, you're going to see beautiful phrases. And I just want to encourage you, if there are phrases that resonate with you, that you see another sister say, take a screenshot, write it down, whatever. So you don't forget that is, it's helping you discover more about how to use the creativity and beautiful language. Because we don't want, our husbands already have a hard time putting on the shame jacket. We don't need to add to the shame jacket. We're not responsible for their shame, but we can be mindful, careful about the words we choose, so we honor who we are as women and who we want to be.
And I think, so that's who we want to be in our big circle. And I'm just going to talk about one other piece strategically. So I'm a strategist and I like to think about strategy. And I think that you are more likely to get less, especially when you're divorcing a narcissist, if you can be compassionate and empathetic to their feelings of abandonment, if you can take some responsibility. They're not going to take any, but if you can take some, I can't do this anymore. This has been too hard for me. I've grown and this isn't okay for me. I know this is okay for you, but not okay for me. The more compassionate and empathetic you can be, the less you will poke their narcissistic wound. I mean, it's bad enough that you're leaving them, but if you can leave them with their dignity intact and their image intact, with them not having to be told they're a jerk and a loser and a covert narcissist and you hate them, which is what you probably want to say, But if you can use your words wisely, strategic wise, you will probably do better and your children will do better. And that is all the more reason to be careful of how you say goodbye.
So good.
All right. So yeah. Thanks, Leanne. Ladies, we've gone a long time. I know this is a big module, so we wanted to give you some extra time. Next week, we're going to start on our stability module. And this is some of the same. We're going to be talking about core strength, because if you have core strength physically, you don't lose your balance as easily, especially as you age. You need that core strength for your posture, so you don't turn into a little old hunch over lady. That you can, if you trip, you can catch yourself. You have good balance. And so we're going to learn about building that core strength, because if your husband pushes you emotionally or says something verbally, you don't want to lose your balance. You want to go flipping out or going doing something stupid that later your big circle regrets, because emotionally you let your emotions take you to a place that now costs you. It gives you consequences. We've had women arrested for DUIs because they went out drinking and then they drove. We've had Conquer women get arrested for abuse because they pushed their husband in a moment of anger and left a scratch, and he called the police and they got arrested for abuse and had trouble with their custody. You don't want to let that happen to you. You don't want to let him manipulate circumstances to push you over the edge and you react in a way that dishonors yourself in front of your children, so then he can parentally alienate you. You need the stability module for you to start building that core strength so that you're not so easily knocked over and knocked down emotionally and mentally. All right, so now you got clarity, but now you got to build some muscles so that you can stay in clarity. All right, it's not just the window opens and then the window shuts, all right? We want the window to stay open. We want you to stay strong and get strong. And so this is a very important next step for you. And again, you have as much time as you need to go back over these videos, to rewatch them, to take notes, to process, and it will take you. I mean, Conquer isn't just a 2-month course. There's women who've been in Conquer for years, because this is emotional maturity 101, spiritual maturity 101, and some basics to learn how to grow. And it will take you time, not just to learn it, but to do it and to apply it. It's okay. It's okay. We are glad that you're here, and we're so thrilled that you want to do your own work. And as you do your work, you will impact your children in the way that you raise them, in the way that you talk to them, in the way that you relate with them. And hopefully in a good way, you will impact your husband, that as he sees you're taking your focus off of him. If you don't want to do your work, that's up to you, but I'm going to do my work. I'm going to do my work. And as you do your work, you can say, my work says that this is an unhealthy conversation, so I'm not going to continue to participate because I don't want to say the wrong thing. That's a boundary. All right, you don't have to say mean, you don't have to be ugly. You can just say it just like that. My work says that I'm not capable of carrying on this conversation anymore because I'm about to throw up all over you and I don't want to do that. So I got to take a break. Right? I'm not talking about you at all. I'm just talking about me. That might impress them. Like, how'd you do that? How'd you know that? And we've actually had men who have said that, like, this is different. So you might be the light and example that he needs to turn the lights on in himself too. Maybe not, but some do. All right. Take care. And thanks, Leanne. Bye-bye.